Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Eliana Kernodle. Leading polling averages for the top two national races in Pennsylvania are split between Republican and Democrat. Joining me with more on this story is the Center Square's Pennsylvania editor, Kristen Smith. Kristen, where do the polls stand?
So for the top two races in the state, that's obviously the presidential race and then the U.S. Senate race. Donald Trump is actually up by a tiny 0.3 percentage points over Vice President Kamala Harris right now. And that's looking at the last 20 or so polls since mid-September, right after they had their debate. Now, what's important to note about that is that tiny lead, it's been really contentious over those polls. You know, he's only ever commanded as much as a 3% lead over Harris, whereas she's been up by as many as 5 points, mostly in the weeks after the debate, which was on September 10th. Interestingly, the candidates have been tied in 6 of the polls. I think that these numbers are far closer than historical averages would show for Republican and Democrat candidates in the presidential election in Pennsylvania. Biden in 2020 and Hillary Clinton in 2016 consistently polled many points ahead of Donald Trump and importantly, far outside of the margin of error. So we know what happened in 2016. He took the state by a very narrow margin. In 2020, he lost by a little bit more, by like 1.5 percentage points. So the narrowness of these polls seems to suggest that the race is very tight, which I don't think anyone would be surprised by. However, is it going to be a situation where Trump overperforms on election day versus underperforming in these polls, which could make a big difference? However, these are all within the margin of error. So if you want to look at it statistically, they're effectively tied. But looking at the history of the polls, it's interesting to see how he's not only keeping up, but getting ahead of her in certain weeks. On the other side of this is the U.S. Senate race. We have Bob Casey Jr., who's been our incumbent senator for 3 terms now, and then Dave McCormick, who is his Republican challenger. They have not been close in the race really at all. In polls going back to March 27th, so even before our primaries, Casey's been up double digits. Now that lead has narrowed in the last couple of months, and as of Thursday when we are recording this, he's up 3.9 percentage points in the average, and that's of the last 7 or 8 polls. So he's been up as much as 8 points since these two candidates had their debate on October 3rd. But there's also been, in a Fox News poll between September 20th and September 24th, Casey was up 9 points. So his lead has been strong even in recent weeks. It's not just limited to early on in this election.
Pennsylvania is arguably one of the biggest battleground states. So what do these polls kind of show us about what's going on the ground?
So we're very split, as the headline here suggests, and that analysts all over the country have pointed out, and it's not getting any more clear for Harris and Trump as to who's going to win. For both of those candidates, though, it's vital. Our 19 electoral college votes here are considered the main path to the White House, and whichever candidate loses that, there's a strong belief that they will lose the White House if they don't get Pennsylvania. So there's some other polling that goes back a couple of weeks and shows that what the main issue that seems to keep them really tied are economic issues. That's what voters are most worried about. And that's where they seem to have that's where Donald Trump seems to have his strength, is on economic issues. Whether that's fair or not, it depends. Kamala Harris is she's the vice president in a very difficult economic situation for us. And it's, inflation's high, cost of living is high. People are struggling to put gas in their cars and to afford groceries. And so the current administration, of course, is going to get a lot of the blame for that, whether it's correct or not. We're not economists here at the Center Square in Pennsylvania. But there are voters out there who continue week after week, poll after poll. They say it's the economy. Now, less important but still important are things like abortion and immigration. But those economic issues, that's ruling the ticket here. And that's what these candidates are going to have to eventually convince voters they're the better choice on.
And is Pennsylvania, forgive my ignorance on this, is Pennsylvania a winner-take-all state?
Yes, Pennsylvania is a winner-take-all state. So whoever takes this state is going to get all of those 19 electoral college votes. And, given the tight nature of this, they're going to need every single one.
Well, Kristen, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story at thecentersquare.com.